5:17 hours. Persian Gulf, 47 nautical miles northeast of the Strait of Hormuz. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group maintained standard patrol formation in international waters. Seastate.com, visibility unlimited. Surface air search. Radar aboard the Ticonderoga-class cruiser, USS Cape St. George, registers the first anomalous return smell, slow-moving contacts emerging from the Iranian coastline. Within 90 seconds, that number climbs to 60. The air warfare commander aboard Cape St. George identifies the signature. Small, unmanned aerial vehicles, compact radar, cross-sections, altitude 800 feet, inbound bearing 285 degrees. The threat assessment is immediate and unambiguous. This is not reconnaissance. This is saturation doctrine overwhelm defensive systems through sheer numeric superiority. Probe reaction time, test weapons, magazine depth. The tactical action officer aboard Abraham Lincoln elevates alert status to general quarters. Klaxon, sound across 5 warships. The crew is trained for this scenario in simulation for 18 months. Now the simulation has materialized at 220 knots closure speed. Every radar screen in the strike group paints the same picture. A swarm, not staggered contacts or probing flights, but a coordinated mass launch designed to arrive simultaneously within a compressed engagement window. Intelligence analysts aboard the carrier identify the platforms within minutes. Shade 129 and Abibil 3 variants. Iranian domestically produced systems with ranges exceeding 150 nautical miles. Some carry optical sensors for targeting. Others carry fragmentation warheads, weighing 40 kilograms. The doctrine is transparent. Saturate the outer defensive ring. Overwhelm close-in weapon systems. Achieve even a single penetration against a capital ship. One successful impact generates strategic messaging worth millions in propaganda value. The strike group commander's response is equally transparent. Not one will penetrate. At 5:19 hours, the first defensive layer activates. 2 FA-180 Super Hornets on routine combat air patrol, 80 nautical miles east of the carrier, receive vectors from the E-2D advanced Hawkeye, airborne early warning aircraft orbiting at 25,000 feet. The Hawkeye's APY-9 radar tracks all 60 contacts simultaneously, feeding targeting data via data link to every shooter in the battlespace. The Super Hornets break from patrol station and accelerate to 450 knots, closing the distance to the leading edge of the swarm. Weapons officers arm AIM-9X. Sidewinder missiles infrared seekers, ideal for small heat signatures at close range at 5:22 hours. The Super Hornets achieve visual contact. The Iranian drones fill the airspace in loose formation. Cheap platforms designed for expendability. The lead pilot achieves tone lock and fires. The first Sidewinder leaps from the rail, motor burn visible for 4 seconds before the warhead detonates against the nearest Shape 129. Debris spirals into the Gulf. The second missile follows 6 seconds later. Another drone disintegrates. The 2 aircraft execute slashing runs through the formation, firing 8 missiles in 90 seconds. 8 drones fall, but 52 remain, and the distance to the carrier shrinks with every passing second. At 5:24 hours, Abraham Lincoln launches 4 additional Super Hornets from catapults 3 and 4. Acceleration pins, pilots against seatbacks, airborne. In 40 seconds, they climb to 15,000 feet and turn toward the swarm, now 38 nautical miles from the carrier. Simultaneously, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters lift from the destroyer, USS Michael Murphy, equipped with GAU to 1.50 caliber machine guns and advanced targeting pods. The helicopters establish holding patterns 12 nautical miles ahead of the strike group, creating a tertiary interception line for any drones that penetrate the fighter screen and ship-based missile systems. At 5:26 hours, the second wave of Super Hornets enters the engagement zone. They do not use missiles. Magazine conservation becomes critical when facing numeric swarms. Instead, pilots select M61A2 Vulcan 20mm rotary cannon, 6 barrels, 6,000 rounds per minute, cyclic rate. The guns are devastating against unarmored drone airframes. The first burst lasts 1.8 seconds. 30 rounds punch through a ship, severing control surfaces. The drone tumbles. The second aircraft engages at 4,000 feet slant range. Cannon fire visible as a laser straight line of tracers. Another drone fragments mid-air. The 4 aircraft work in pairs, slashing through the formation in coordinated runs, conserving missile inventory while maximizing gun kills. At 5:29 hours, 23 drones have been destroyed. 30 remain. Distance to Abraham Lincoln, 22 nautical miles. The engagement transitions from fighter intercepts to ship-based air defense. USS Cape St. George and USS Gridley, both Aegis-equipped cruisers, activate SM-2 standard missile systems. Fire. Control radars lock on to multiple targets simultaneously. Launch cells open. At 5:30 hours, the first SM-2 ignites and clears the vertical launch cell, sustaining acceleration past Mach 2.5. Flight time to target, 18 seconds. The missile's semi-active radar seeker tracks the designated drone through terminal phase. Proximity fuse detonates the 115-pound blast fragmentation warhead at optimal distance. The drone ceases to exist as a coherent object. 3 more missiles launch in 12-second intervals. 3 more drones disintegrate. But SM-2 missiles cost $1.2 million each. The Iranian drones cost perhaps $20,000 per unit. This cost equation defines asymmetric warfare. The U.S. Navy does not optimize for cost parity. It optimizes for mission success. Cape St. George continues, firing at 5:33 hours. Distance closes to 14 nautical miles. The swarm, now reduced to 28 drones, begins exhibiting altered behavior. Individual units break formation, executing evasive altitude changes, speed variations. Iranian operators remotely adjust tactics in real time, adapting to U.S. defensive patterns. This complicates targeting solutions, but does not stop the intercepts. Aboard the Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer, USS Paul Hamilton, the Mk-49 rolling airframe missile system engages. RAM is designed precisely for this scenario. Compact, rapid response. Fire-and-forget missiles optimized for close-range threats. The first RAM clears the launcher and accelerates toward the nearest drone at Mach 2. Infrared seeker locks onto engine heat. Impact occurs at 6 nautical miles. The explosion is small but absolute. At 5:35 hours, Abraham Lincoln itself enters. Active defense posture. The carrier's own weapon systems, typically a last resort, prepare for engagement. RIM-116, rolling airframe missile launchers, train toward inbound contacts. Simultaneously, 3 Phalanx, close-in weapon systems activate across the strike group. Phalanx represents the terminal defensive layer. Radar-guided 20mm Gatling guns, firing 4,500 rounds per minute, creating a wall of tungsten penetrator rounds in front of incoming threats. The systems operate autonomously, tracking and engaging without human input once activated. The first Phalanx aboard USS Michael Murphy locks a drone at 2 nautical miles range. The gun spins up. 2-second burst. The drone shreds into metallic fragments. At 5:37 hours, the MH-60R Seahawks join the engagement. Hovering at 500 feet, door gunners open fire with GAU-21 machine guns. Effective range, 1,800 meters. The gunners walk tracers onto slow-moving drone targets. Mechanical skill combined with optical targeting. One Shate 129 takes multiple hits to its fuselage and engine smoke trails from the impact points. The drone enters an uncontrolled descent and impacts the Gulf surface in a geyser of spray. 11 minutes have elapsed since initial detection. The battle space resembles a layered killing field fighter aircraft above. Ship-launched missiles in mid-altitude zones. Helicopters. At low altitude, Phalanx systems providing point defense. No single system dominates. The defense succeeds through integration, every layer compensating for the limitations of the others. The Iranian swarm, designed to exploit gaps, finds no gaps. At 5:41 hours, 8 drones remain. They have penetrated 2 within 8 nautical miles of Abraham Lincoln, closer than any hostile airborne contact has approached a U.S. carrier in 2 decades. But proximity does not equal success. Cape St. George fires 2 more SM-2 missiles. Simultaneous impacts eliminate 2 drones. A Super Hornet executing its 4th gun run destroys another. RAM missiles from USS Gridley account for 2 more. The Seahawk gunners claim another with sustained machine gun fire. At 5:43 hours, 3 drones remain at 5 nautical miles. Phalanx systems aboard Abraham Lincoln achieve firing solutions. The first system fires a 3-second burst to 125 rounds. The lead drone disintegrates. The second Phalanx engages at 1 point for nautical miles. Another drone fragments. The final drone, trailing black smoke from previous battle damage, attempts to close the distance. A RAM missile from Abraham Lincoln's own launcher intercepts at 4,500 feet range. The warhead detonates. Debris rains into the Gulf. At 5:44 hours, 11 minutes and 27 seconds after initial detection, the skies above the carrier strike group are clear. 60 Iranian drones launched. 60 Iranian drones destroyed. 0 penetration. Damage assessment. 0 American casualties. Compile engagement 0 data. Damage to total U.S. munitions vessels. Expenditure. 11 SM-2 standard missiles. 17 RIM-116 rolling airframe missiles. 14 AIM-9X Sidewinder air-to-air missiles. approximately 4,800 rounds of 20mm ammunition from Phalanx systems, roughly 2,200 rounds of 20mm from aircraft cannons, an estimated 600 rounds of .50 caliber from helicopter door guns. Every round accounted for. Every missile logged. The data feeds into tactical analysis before the last piece of debris settles into the water. Rescue alert helicopters launched to search for potential survivors not from downed drones, but as standard procedure following any combat engagement. In these waters, they find none. The Iranian drones were unmanned, the engagement entirely remote, no human losses on either side. But the strategic implications bear nothing abstract about them. The tactical lessons were immediate and unambiguous. Swarm doctrine, while theoretically sound, requires not just numeric superiority, but also defensive gaps to exploit. The U.S. Navy demonstrated no such gaps existed. Layered air defense, from fighters at extended range to point defense guns at close range, created overlapping kill zones that no saturation attack could penetrate without accepting catastrophic attrition. The engagement validated 2 decades of doctrinal investment in integrated air and missile defense. Every sensor fed data to every shooter. No platform fought alone. The network was the weapon. Regional reactions cascaded within hours. Iranian state media initially claimed a successful reconnaissance operation that gathered valuable intelligence on U.S. defensive capabilities. Within 12 hours, as satellite imagery confirmed wreckage patterns and international observers verified the outcome, that narrative shifted to claims of defensive success, asserting that the drones had successfully forced the carrier strike group to expend millions of dollars in munitions. The cost exchange argument held mathematical truth but strategic irrelevance. The U.S. Navy did not enter the Persian Gulf to achieve cost parity with Iranian drone inventories. It entered to maintain freedom of navigation and demonstrate that no swarm, regardless of size, could threaten American capital ships. Allied nations throughout the Gulf Cooperation Council observed with acute interest. The engagement provided empirical proof that U.S. defensive systems could defeat the precise threat they faced from Iranian proxies and direct Iranian military assets. Mass drone attacks designed to overwhelm sensors and magazines for regional partners hosting U.S. forces or purchasing U.S. weapon systems. The 11-minute engagement served as the most effective sales demonstration imaginable. Confidence in American defensive technology surged. Requests for Patriot batteries, systems, and naval integration packages increased within weeks. Iranian military planners faced harder reckonings. 60 drones represented a substantial investment in hardware, operational planning, and trained personnel to execute coordinated launchers. The complete failure to achieve even a single penetration against the strike group indicated that swarm tactics alone would not suffice. Future engagements would require either significantly larger swarms, perhaps numbering in the hundreds, or integration of more sophisticated platforms, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, or manned aircraft. Each escalation carried greater cost and greater risk of triggering responses. Beyond localized tactical engagements, this engagement fundamentally reshaped calculations regarding carrier vulnerability in confined waters. For years, defense analysts had questioned whether large capital ships remained viable in an era of precision missiles and expendable drones. The Persian Gulf engagement provided data-driven answers. Carriers remained viable, not because they were invulnerable, but because the defensive networks surrounding them had evolved faster than the threats arrayed against them. The carrier itself was merely the center of a layered, sensor-fused, multi-platform defensive ecosystem. That ecosystem had just processed and eliminated 60 threats in 11 minutes while under real-world combat conditions. The broader strategic message resonated beyond military channels. The engagement occurred in international waters, within long-established transit corridors used by commercial shipping and naval vessels from dozens of nations. Iran's decision to launch a mass drone attack against a U.S. carrier strike group in those waters represented an explicit challenge to freedom of navigation. The U.S. response complete destruction of the attacking force without yielding position or altering course constituted an equally explicit answer. The carrier strike group remained on station for 6 additional days following the engagement, conducting routine operations, launching and recovering aircraft, demonstrating that neither the attack nor the defensive expenditure had degraded operational capability. 11 minutes and 20 seconds of combat generated strategic effects that would persist for years. Iranian military planning adjusted to account for validated U.S. defensive capabilities. Regional allies recalibrated confidence in American protection. International observers noted both the provocation and the response. drawing conclusions about acceptable behavior in contested maritime spaces, and the U.S. Navy collected 11 minutes of real-world combat data that would feed into training simulations, doctrine updates, and weapons procurement decisions for the next decade. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group resumed routine patrol operations at 6 o'clock hours, 43 minutes after the engagement concluded. Flight operations continued. Radar watchers maintained standard intervals. The sea remained calm, visibility unlimited. The wreckage of 60 Iranian drones lay scattered across 12 nautical miles of the Persian Gulf, already sinking or drifting with the current. Within 72 hours, the debris field would disperse entirely, but the lesson would not disperse. The lesson was permanent, written in the unambiguous language of layered air defense and 0 successful penetrations. The strait remains open, not through negotiation, but through demonstrated capability. 60 drones tested that capability. 11 minutes later, none remained.